Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here with my next Airspeed's Korra Rewatch video. This one's going to be for K404 The Calling. And this is a really good episode of Korra. Definitely I think it's, like obviously with Korra alone it's hard to say it's the best so far, but I think that being like a special episode focusing on Korra's journey, I think it's the best kind of outside of Korra alone so far. And I think it probably ranks up as being one of the better ones from the book as well. Because it is different as well, because it's a focus on the Airkids for a lot of the episode. You get to see Korra and Toph and Korra go through an important stage of her recovery. So I think this episode accomplishes a decent amount. Like, is it perfect? No. I think the main issue would be that it is the only episode this book where you really get a focus on the Airkids, and especially Jinora, now that she has her tattoos. I expected a little bit more from her in this episode. She definitely, of the three, feels like the least focused upon member of the Airkids in this episode, in that Ikki takes the spotlight, which I don't mind. She's definitely the one most in need of development, and I think this episode, focusing on her, helps her a lot. And then Milo, his personality always comes across in the scenes that he's in, that just because he's such a kind of crazy, out there personality, nearly anything that he does kind of gets across who he is. And because he's the youngest, there's not as much of a need for like a character arc for him. Whereas like you see Ikki's now old enough where like you can sort of get behind her on some stuff. But Jinora just kind of taking the backseat role here is like, okay, she's there for her powers, but we're not using her all that much. The reason I say that mainly is because the entire book doesn't use Jinora particularly well. She's there, but is never the focus of a lot of what's going on here. And especially because her relationship with Kai doesn't get focused. It kind of felt like they did all this setup from book 2 and 3 for her, but then didn't really like deliver once you kind of developed the character. In a similar way to, like, imagine we went into book 3 and there was barely any Korra scenes. But imagine Korra went through all that development in book 1 and especially book 2. And then we didn't really get to see her all that much as a more developed character. They obviously didn't give her much of a character arc in book 3, but any scene she was in, it was clear that she's a much more mature character, and I think that worked really well. It's a similar thing with Jinora, except they just didn't use her all that much. But yeah, let's get into this. I actually want to start with the Toph and Korra plot. Usually I kind of go through it in order, but I want to get this to really focus on this because it is such a emotional scene. It's such an important moment, and just seeing it again, like it's a powerful scene. Korra's reaction when she realizes that the Airkids, Jinora, Ikki, Milo, are coming for her, in that the entire build-up so far has been that Korra's sort of been avoiding, she's disconnected herself from everyone, as Toph says. She would purposefully avoid going towards people that she knows cares about her, but now that people are coming towards her, something that she can't really stop, she's willing to accept it, and it brings back all those emotions, and she is honestly happy to see them. And I think that was a really good point of just, like, Korra feeling that she had to do this on her own was like, it was this kind of ultimately wrong move, but it kind of got her towards the point where she needed to be. So accepting now that she has to kind of get back in touch with everyone to finish her recovery is a really nice thing to do. And the setup towards this, obviously, is that Toph, after what happened last time out, Korra not wanting to let her basically take the medal out, has sort of said, like, no, we're not doing anything. Korra really wants to do something, and Toph sends her out on this mission to get food. And we later learn that this was Toph's, like, subtle way of helping Korra with some development. That she wasn't going to say, okay, kind of like Empire Strikes Back type thing, like Yoda telling, like, Luke to walk into the cave, on Dagobah. It's kind of like that, except she doesn't initially frame it as like, you're going to learn a lesson here. It's more kind of, just go out there, that's roughly where the food is, and you'll get it. And Korra goes through this, and because she doesn't think it's anything, like she wasn't expecting anything, it's a shock to her when Toph says that, yeah, I had a feeling the swamp would do something like that. And it's a good scene because you see Korra react to the fact that all of the previous villains have hurt her. Amon took her bending away. She got it back, but still, she had to experience what it was like to be without her bending and go through a lot. Let's not forget, Korra, prior to the Aang reveal, was in a very kind of bad spot. Book 2, she obviously got Rava ripped out of her and has lost the connection to the past lives. That has to still weigh on her, that during her time as the Avatar, the past lives have been destroyed. And then Zahir, most notably, has like physically hurt her and has basically limited her for like 3 years. She's taken so long to kind of physically get back, and she's still not quite there. And you can see the impact that all of them have had, and this is what, obviously from last episode, we were sort of building towards. Why Toph basically said to Korra, you're keeping that metal inside you and not taking it out because it gives you an excuse to not go back to that, not potentially get hurt again. And it allows here Toph to come in and kind of explain it to her a bit more, that you're carrying your past enemies around with you. You know, you're fighting the battles that you've already got through. You've won those, and that's what she's going to have to learn, I suppose, a little bit later on with Zahir, to just like accept that she may have been hurt, but she's still here. She's stronger than ever because she's went through all of this. But here it's just accepting that, you know, move past those enemies, but don't just treat them as enemies, that people who just tried to hurt you. Learn from why they opposed you, why this all happened, what the disagreement was about. And Toph just explains that, like, Amon wanted equality. Unalaq brought the spirits back. Zahir was about freedom. I think the Zahir one's like a bit like overly vague, and that like there's not much of a way to like sugarcoat really what was going on there. It was like, bring the spirits back. Okay, cool. Equality, yes. In terms of like bender, non-bender, very specific. Just like saying Zahir, Red Lotus, freedom. Like, what's the problem there? Like, Korra didn't learn about freedom from the Red Lotus, so they're purposely vague about that. But Zahir is the one they are meant to deal with a little bit more later on, of course. But still, and then Len then saying, but they all took their ideologies too far. They were out of balance, and you can learn from that. And it's shown that by the fact that she already has, like, the whole Unalaq thing. She learned from that and took a kind of more balanced approach with keeping the portals open while still defeating Vatu. Not doing it completely Unalaq's way, but accepting that he had a point, and so on. So I really like that as the kind of initial explanation here of, like, you have to kind of reconnect with people. You've disconnected yourself for too long. They go to the banyan tree, which is a really cool, it is such a memorable location. It's so spiritual. You know something's going to happen here that's notable, and just kind of explaining, like Toph said in the last episode, that you are effectively connected to the entire world through this swamp. That's its power, basically. Reconnect once again. And she does. She goes through the vines, and obviously the closest people to her are the Airkids who are in the swamp. And that's when the emotional scene comes out. I love the music begins to like ramp up. The Airkids rush to her. She's so excited to see them. And it just works because it is this really happy reunion. They like her hair. She's happy to see them again. She introduces them to Toph, which I thought was a really nice scene of just like, oh hey Toph, I don't know if you've probably met them, you already know about them, but these are Katara and Aang's grandchildren. And of course Toph would like Mila the most. It just very fun scene, like that you've been waiting for. Like it has only been like 4 episodes, but Korra finally reconnecting with people she knows and cares about, like the Airkids' successful completion of their mission. It all comes together here to work really, really nicely. And then they have to tell her, you're needed again, which I think is often this kind of ignored point, but like there is a sense that with Korra at this point in time, she's feeling that she isn't needed, because that's a part of kind of what Toph was, I suppose, hinting at potentially in the last episode. Her need for development coming up with, you really think you're that like important as the Avatar? and like all the villains kind of saying that to her as well, like the time with the Avatar is over and so on. And now here are the Airkids coming and saying, we need you. Kuvira is taking over the Earth Kingdom. You need to come back. And this prompting Korra's need to complete her recovery here. Get the last bit of metal out. And it's such a great scene. The music that plays here, I hope, the news obviously yesterday that the soundtrack, you know, there's hope now, I think, for the soundtrack because of what Jeremy Zuckerman said on Facebook. I hope like this piece of music is in there because it's so powerful and well done, of just Korra taking it out herself, doing the more kind of fluid metal bending. Like you always get the sense there's like elements of water bending included here because you're bending a liquid metal. And the struggles as, like before, she has to get through the blocks that are stopping her from taking it out, which is she going to accept coming back to being the Avatar? Is she going to leave the victories over her past villains behind her and move past it? And she does, and it's a struggle. She gets the last bit of metal out, Toph seals it away, and the glow comes back. And I think that's the only confusion with this episode, that because the approach that they take with Korra's arc is to have it be this sort of like dual stage recovery. There's this, and then there's also Beyond the Wilds with the Zahir scene. And the confusing part is that she has the Avatar state back here, but she doesn't have a connection to Rava back. And it's kind of like writers, you wrote book 2, like you told us that like the Avatar state is Rava, so how can Korra use the Avatar state but not be connected to Rava? They tried to explain it that like, oh, her spiritual connection is gone, but it's like the Avatar state is literally using a spirit. How can Korra like use Rava's power but not like properly have like a connection with Rava? It's the only technical point that I think is kind of frustrating in all of this. Like ultimately they're just trying to get to the point of like Korra can't like meditate right now into the spirit world, and that's kind of what's required to fully complete her recovery by moving past Zahir, who caused most of this problems for her. And it works. I like the Zahir scene, we'll get to it. It's just that technical aspect of the recovery, given that most of the same writers wrote book 2, which was one of the most like technically sound, detail correct, like mechanical kind of books in terms of explaining things to us, and now you're seemingly adding this extra kind of murkiness, confusion to Korra's recovery, which is meant to be this really powerful arc for the character, and it is. It's just they add a little bit too much, like when we get to it, like Korra failing in the fight against Kuvira, it's just like, but she's recovered, like what's the problem? It is this sense of like, wait, well, what are they doing here? Like that was her recovery, like it was such an amazing scene, they did it so well. I get that they wanted to hit it home that like she's still not fully confident, she's not fully back, there's something still holding her back. It's just along the way they don't, I suppose, signpost it as well as they could. I praised like Korra alone for presenting all of these mysteries, and the speculation that was going on was great because you didn't know exactly what the problem was. But the problem is that when you're resolving this issue, you kind of have to get a little bit more specific, because what is Korra actually moving past, you have to explain what that is. And I think that's the only issue with Korra's whole arc, is just it's not as super clear as it I think should be. I get you're dealing with complex issues of like her mental issues, but the technical aspects, like there shouldn't really be a problem there. But we'll get to the whole Zaofu thing and what the problem is, and especially when we get to Beyond the Wilds. But yeah, like just Korra's kind of back now, seemingly. It's really good. She goes off with the Airkids. Toph's happy to have some peace again. It's a solid ending to the episode. Like Korra is returning. Big moments. The Airkid side of things. I like that they give a good amount of time to the Airkids here because it is needed. Milo and Iki especially haven't had a ton of focus. Like a couple of scenes in book 1, primarily like the scene where they came out fighting to save Lin. Book 2, they like Janora obviously got big focus, and then Milo got like a a kind of a subplot of an episode. I think it was episode 5 of Book 2, Peacekeepers. Civil War Part 1 and 2, kind of you had the Iki arc in a way, where like Tenzin, they had to find her. That was well done. But like that's really been it. Otherwise, like they've just been kind of characters who've kind of come in and out. They've used them little bits and pieces. Like last book, like it was just Iki and Mila were at the air temple, and we saw them do a little bit of training, and so on. They were involved in when they went to the Northern Air Temple, they did some training, but never like, here is Iki doing something that like really gets across like her character, her strengths, weaknesses, that sort of thing. Whereas like we sort of got that with Jinora. And as for this episode, like I said at the start, I think they could have done a little bit more with Jinora here. I think the problem with this side of the episode, and the only problem I really have, is just that Jinora almost comes across as like, she is in a way like the problem of the episode. That she depends so much on her spiritual powers that she just ignores everyone else. That she's put in this position as like the leader of the three of them here. She's in charge. And because of that, she just ignores everyone. Like Iki sort of says, she acts like she's kind of above it all. And it's kind of like, yeah, she sort of does. And like, I don't think we quite expect that from the character. I get they're sort of like very focused on three siblings and their relationship with each other. So of course some of the kind of issues are going to come up because they all know each other so well that they're going to like snipe at each other for every little problem that they have. And you know, a lot of stuff is going to come up here, and frustrations because they're siblings. And they can do that because they're siblings and immediately move past them. As we sort of learned from a lot of the issues that were dealt with in Book 2, that the Airkids had an issue, they kind of made Iki kind of run away, she came back, they immediately resolved things, and the same thing with like the Tenzin and his siblings. So in that sense, I don't read into it too much. I just wish they had like given Jinora as much focus as they kind of gave Milo in this episode, where like Milo actually gets a little bit of a chance to shine, because he's a bit older now, so he's even more crazy. Like he thinks he's like this kind of commander, he's in charge. Even though he's the youngest and probably like the least suited to lead, he feels he's the best. He's super overconfident, and you know, he's at that age where he just thinks he's the best thing ever. And the other two are very frustrated by him, but his kind of drive to like make something happen gets them their first lead by spotting that picture of Korra. And you get the fun moment where he meets Tu Yin, and you know, that girl. It's a fun little scene where you just kind of, you leave just a little like seed there of like, will they come back to that? Like when Milo's older, like will they meet again, and maybe that will be that relationship for Milo, or not? Because they focused a good amount on it to just get across like his character, and that like he's acting all kind of crazy, but then he actually just kind of gets a little bit shy kind of in front of this girl that he likes, and you know, Iki teasing him about it. It's a fun one, and I just liked it as like a little cute moment for the character, that he's talking about how kind of brave and tough he is, and then he's just immediately like distracted by this girl. Iki though is definitely the star of the show in this side of the episode. It is in a way like her episode. What you really get to see here is like Mila's the crazy one, Jinora's like so calm, cool, collected that she comes across as like not caring, and then you have like Iki sort of in the middle. The personality that we've had from her before has always been that she's the chatterbox, she likes to talk a lot, but she's also the very like caring one of them. Like more so than any of them, she comes across as being very, very nice, and she actually like really does care about people and presents herself well. And just through her personality and how kind of like bubbly she is, she kind of makes people like her. And that's what you see in this episode, that when she goes off on her own and gets captured by the Earth Empire guys, for the sake of the discussion, I'm just going to call them Mario and Luigi, because I don't think we ever got names for these two guys, but that's more or less kind of the dynamic that it comes across as. But when she's with those two, it's really interesting because they're initially like planning to like, you know, hand her over to Kavira, like use her to get the other Airkids and hand them over to Kavira to gain a promotion. But she immediately turns things around by just picking up on what they're talking about to each other, the fact that they're frustrated by being in the position that they're in, that they're considered as just being these kind of Earth Empire grunts, and they're given like the worst job, and they want to go to Zaofu with the rest of the crew, which again, set up based on the last episode. Zaofu is one of the last places left, the last place left in the Earth Kingdom, apart from, as we'll get the very kind of specific thing of her wanting to get the United Republic back for the Earth Kingdom. So Zaofu is the last kind of free city left, confirming that Kuvira is heading there. That's the plan. She kind of learns that, but it kind of comes up as a plot point a little bit later on. That's kind of what they're heading to stop at the moment. That's where Korra's going to head. So I like that as a plot setup that kind of Iki learns about. But you can see just by being nice to them, by being kind of empathetic towards them, she really like links into that like, I understand what you're going through. That's how I feel with my siblings, that I'm kind of left out, not treated with any respect, and I get what you're going through. And she gets them on her side. The Luigi guy, like, she gets immediately because he's kind of a bit of a oddball. The Mario guy is much more serious, but she gets him on her side as well. She orders them to give her the food, she gets it, and eventually has them helping her with her mission. She wants to find Korra, and she basically has them willing to give her all the maps, all of the scouting reports to potentially find Korra. And it's all through the strength of her character being able to, break through this kind of hostile kind of atmosphere that they have and make them at ease while she's comfortably just sitting there tied up, knowing that at any time, if she needs to, she could just break free of those ropes and airbend and take them out if she absolutely needed to, which is good control of the situation. And on her way to finding them, and she finds out that the swamp is the one place that the Earth Empire don't go into, and they don't have any scouting reports from there. So Iki makes the logical conclusion that she's probably there. I think the other Jinora thing that sort of frustrates me in the episode is that they're going over the swamp, a very spiritual place, and Iki's points are fairly logical, but Jinora just for some reason says, no, I don't sense you're there. And again, it's the over-reliance on the powers, and it's something you don't expect from Jinora, to just kind of dismiss something spiritual like that as being a reason for something to happen. It comes good in the end, and that she is the one to sense Korra because of the connection through the spirit vines. But just getting them there was it's a little bit of a frustrating thing there. But I think that's part of the episode, that the siblings purposefully frustrate each other, and you see them accept that, but also realize at the end that they wouldn't have accomplished their mission if they weren't if they didn't have this relationship where they argued with each other, had issues, did their own thing, and solved it by all three of them, their unique personalities and skills, finding it in the end. So that's cool. Yeah, you also find out over the course of this episode that Milo's actually a really, really good artist, and seems to hint that he has other hidden talents that he doesn't get across, where he focuses more on just coming across as being very confident. But yeah, they're dragged into the swamp. Further confirmation that the swamp is kind of alive, and it's not just a swamp bender doing this, or vine bender, which again is something I'd really like to know. Is there a spirit of the swamp that is doing this, that is related to the destiny of people, where you need to come here to learn this lesson and you will benefit from it. That's what happened with Aang in that episode, and it's kind of what happens here. The Airkids need to go here to find Korra, and that's exactly what happens. In the same way that Korra wandered into the middle of the swamp and had the visions that she needed to kind of gain context to kind of get through her problems. So overall, really, really good episode. Just some small frustrations with aspects of the plot, of just that this seems like the final recovery of Korra, but then they're going to add this kind of technical aspect to it that is kind of a bit all over the place, with she has the Avatar step back, but Rava is not quite there fully yet, or she's not connected to Rava in some way, and what does that actually mean? It just gets so technical at that point that you're just like, I don't have a clue what you're talking about anymore. But we'll discuss that. And then just, I think Jinora could have used a little bit more of a focus of just presenting some more positive sides of her character, just because for the rest of the book she doesn't really get those moments. But I really do enjoy this episode. It's got some great moments. The reunion of the Airkids and Korra is better done than her reunion with like Asami, Mako, and Bolin. So that's something. They just make this so much more impactful. And then the scene where Korra's taking the metal out of herself is really well done. It's one of the best done scenes, I think, in this book. But yeah, that's been the review. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.